Hello everyone, and welcome back to the garage. Today we are going to be taking a look at and beginning a new restoration series on this Bally Night Club bingo pinball machine from 1956. And I'll get more into what a bingo pinball machine is here in a minute. Now, if you've seen my Catalina pinball machine restoration series, you'll know that this machine is not the first one that I've restored on this channel. And as you can see, Catalina is still taken apart right over here. As of the filming of this clip, we're just finishing up putting some clear coat on the pieces of wood that need to be clear coated, and then the machine should be pretty much ready to be put back together. So part 3 of that series may already be uploaded by the time you see this video. So let's go ahead and take a look at this machine. I have not done anything to it yet. This is exactly how it came to me, and I'm pretty excited to restore this one because it's very different from the internal workings on Catalina. So let's go ahead and take a look at this pinball machine, see what kind of condition it's in, and see what we need to do to get it working once again. So here we have yet another pinball machine, Bally Night Club from 1956. This is exactly how I got it. I haven't made any changes to it or done any sort of testing or anything with it. It arrived to me looking just like this. And as you can notice right off the bat, this is not a regular machine. There are no flippers, there are no bumpers, no slingshots, no anything. The only thing in this machine are 25, well 26 if you count this ball return hole, holes, captive holes, that the balls drop into. Well, this is not a regular pinball machine. This is what you would call a bingo pinball machine. They were primarily made in the 1950s and 60s, and they were mostly used for gambling. And before I got this machine, I knew pretty much nothing about how these things worked, but I've done some research, I've watched some videos, and I know enough about these machines now, like how they work, and I feel confident enough that I'll be able to restore this machine to working condition. So I'll give you kind of the brief explanation here as to how these things work. So you insert a nickel into this mechanism here, and that'll start up the game, and you get 5 balls per game, and your goal is to shoot the ball and land it in these holes in a way that you get a bingo on this card here on the back glass. So either 5 in a row vertically, horizontally, or diagonally. But if you insert more nickels into the machine, you can light up what are called features. Now, each bingo machine had different features, and the features are laid out on the back glass. And it's not guaranteed that you're going to light up a feature on the back glass. You have to keep putting money in, and then eventually a feature or 2 or more will light up on the back glass, which will give you greater odds at winning your game. So, for example, here's a feature right here. Red, 3, 4, or 5 in line scores double. So if you were to get either 3, 4, or 5 in a row on a red line, as you can see, there's a red line here, there's one here, and there's one there. So if this is lit before you shoot the first ball, that feature will be applied to your entire game. So it will score double the amount of credits. And that's what you are awarded, and those credit numbers are shown here. So when the game begins, a set of these 3 numbers will be lit up. So for example, this one, it says 4, 16, and 64. So say for example, when you first start your game, 4, 16, and 64 are lit up. So what that means is if you get 3 in a row, you will receive 4 credits. If you get 4 in a row, you get 16 credits. 5 in a row, you get 64. And if you keep putting money in the machine, these are called odds, your odds of winning. They will go up. So as you can see, when the odds are all the way up, you'll get 48, 144, and 192 credits at the highest odd. And to get those odds up that high, you had to keep putting money into the machine, which will increase your odds and increase the number of features that you light on the back glass. And it's not always guaranteed that you're going to be able to get higher odds or more features, because sometimes you might insert a coin and nothing happens. And so the credit counter is up here. This machine currently has 492 credits in it, and that's actually a lot. So how this works is when you insert a nickel, that starts the game. There's no like start button on this thing, and that won't increase the number of credits. The only time the credit counter up there will increase is if you get a 3, 4, or 5 in a row, or you do something else in another feature. Like this one says corners score 5 in line. So if you were to light all 4 corners on the bingo card by putting the balls in the correct holes, that will score you the amount of credits that a 5 in a row would score. So whichever of the top numbers here is lit, you would get that many amount of credits. And so when there are credits in there, you can just push the button, I believe it's the red one, and that will spend one of your credits so that you don't have to put in a nickel. So if this machine was actually set up in a casino or something like that and it had 492 credits, you could spend as many of those credits as you want without putting in a single coin. So depending on how much money you put in and how many credits you get, you could be at this machine for quite a long time. And I'll go over more of these features later as we get the game working, because right now, as you can imagine, the game does not work. It's got some issues. But as you can see, the play field is in pretty good condition. There are supposed to be a couple cards that are here, but they're missing. Now, I was able to find reproduction cards for this game. So once I get those printed out, I can put those back in there, and then those will be there once again. So the play field is in pretty good condition. The back glass, on the other hand, is in absolutely mint condition. I mean, there is not one hint of peeling on this back glass. It is perfect, which is amazing for 1956. So this machine has obviously been sitting for quite some time unused. As you can see, the glass here is very dusty. I have opened this thing up just to take a look inside, and it's got dust like you wouldn't believe in some places. This thing has definitely been not used for a long time. I can tell it's got problems. And one of those problems is it doesn't even have a power cord. Now, I should be getting one today, and the power cord should come out of this little hole right here. There are a couple broken wires in there where the power cord should go, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Here's the back of the machine, and unlike Catalina, this one still has its back door, so I don't have to make a custom back door for this machine. Here's the side artwork. And I don't know if it's supposed to look like this with, you know, kind of these like what seem like little wood chips missing. It's smooth paint, so I imagine this is what it looked like from the factory. It's not in too terrible of shape. It's got some blemishes, but nothing too serious. The front, though, kind of has some wear and tear. As you can see, we got a lot of wood loss on the front here. This part of this wood is coming off. This can be fixed with some wood glue because there's another piece of wood directly behind here, so I can fix this so I won't have to look like that. The front is very much worse for wear. Here's the other side. This is a sticker from the business where I got it, and that is how much I paid for it, only $295, so it wasn't that expensive of a machine. The right side is looking all right as well. Not in too terrible of a condition. I've seen a lot worse. I've seen on one pinball machine that I used to have in the past, someone had sanded all of the paintwork off and tried to like repaint it with different colors on the cabinet, and it just didn't look good. So I've definitely seen a lot worse than this. This is not too bad. So I think now what I'm gonna do is take this thing apart a little bit and show you the inside, because this thing is a lot more complex than Catalina. if you've seen the Catalina restoration series. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the camera on the tripod and we'll take a look at the inner workings of this machine. So first, let's take a look inside the back box. Now, I did receive the keys for this game, so I can actually open all the locks and get into everything. But for whatever reason, the 2 keys that I have don't fit in these locks. I mean, one of them fits, but it won't turn the lock. So obviously I'm gonna have to get 2 new locks for the back box. So that's the first problem that I'll need to address, but it's not really a major one. Fortunately, both of these locks are unlocked, so I can actually open this door. It's on 2 hinges on this side, so it'll hinge open. And once I open it, you can kind of see the monstrosity that we have to deal with here. I mean, look at that. So if you've seen the back box inside my Catalina pinball machine, this one is like 10 times as crowded and more complex. I mean, look at all of the steppers. There's a whole bunch of them. This one is a massive stepper that has steppers inside it. It looks like this thing has like some sort of active cooling because it's got a fan here that's got a motor attached to it. And I saw there was another one down here on this big assembly here. I'm not sure if that's the main like score motor for the game. It's got a million switches on it. Fortunately, in this game, everything is labeled, so I know kind of what these do. And the best part about this is, this game actually has a full manual and schematic diagram documented online. So I can actually use those documents to help me in repairing this machine. And that's good, because if you didn't have a schematic for this machine and like say something was missing, you'd have a pretty hard time wiring it back up correctly. So I'm glad that those documents exist for this machine. So you can see just how much is in here. That's the credit counter. This whole big assembly is for another feature of the game called magic squares, where some of the numbers on the bingo card will actually rotate. So that's another thing that this machine has, and this is the big old motor assembly that controls that. We got more stepper motors back here. There's one there. There's a few relays. Right here we have the game's fuse block, and I did notice that there was a blown fuse in here somewhere, so I'll have to replace it. But other than that, the wiring in this game looks good. I mean, I didn't see anything missing except for one wire inside the playfield, and I'll show that in a little bit. Other than that, everything in this game, including this other relay assembly over here, the wiring looks fine. There's some more relays stacked up here. Here's the contact assembly for one of the big steppers. You can see how many contacts there are. They're not all used. That would be crazy if they were, but they needed a stepper assembly that big to get this game to do the things they wanted it to do. As you can see, we do have some little stickers back here. There's one that advertises what game this is. There's a patent notice in the back of the cabinet. I'm just glad a lot of these things are actually labeled, because there were no labels inside Catalina, so that's great that a majority of the stuff in this game is actually labeled, including the fuses, so that'll make it easy to replace those. And as you can see, the sheer amount of wiring that's in this game, I mean, look how thick the wire harness is for everything. It amazes me that back in the day, they are able to make electromechanical machines do the things they did. Like, the amount of engineering that went into these is insane to me. And that's why I love these things. So in the back box, really the only problem that I noticed right off the bat are these 2 wires right here. They are cut, and I believe that this is where the power cord goes, because that little hole that I showed you before is right next to these wires. It's just right under here. So, and I can reference the schematic just to make sure that that's where the power cord goes, but I believe it is because I looked at it, and the two leads from the power cord go through a fuse. One of them goes through a fuse, but both of them go right to the main transformer, which is right here. So I believe that is where the power cord goes, and I have one on order, as I said. That shouldn't be a big job to wire up. So this is what the inside of the back box of this game looks like. Pretty crazy. But if there's anything wrong back here, I'm going to fix it up. So now I'm going to take out the back glass and playfield glass and show you more of what this game's internals look like. So taking the back glass out on this game is kind of interesting because it's nothing like I've ever seen in any other pinball machine. So what you have to do is there's a lock right here, and then there's another one on the other side. So you stick the key in this lock, and it's not really a lock, it's actually like screwed in by threads. So you use the key to unscrew the actual lock, and what that does, I'll get it fully unscrewed here, is it removes one of the side trim pieces on the back box. So that keeps this piece of wood in place like that. So that comes out, you can see how this looks. It's a lock, but it's got threads on the other end, so it's like a screw. And then there's another lock on this side in the same place that works the same way, and it takes this piece off. So now that those two side pieces are off, the back glass actually slides out the side. So that's how you get the back glass off one of these games. There we go, back glass is off. So now that the back glass is off, you can see back here we have a lot of bulbs. And I noticed that some of them were missing. So there's about 5 or so missing bulbs in this machine, but that's no issue. I can just put new bulbs in there. I have a bunch of them. And now I'll show you how to get behind this panel. So not only can you service the back box of this machine from the back side, you can also service it from the front. And so to get behind this panel, what you have to do is disengage the two locks that are right here. Just pull them up. So there's one. And then pull this one. And for whatever reason, the screw in this one needs to be adjusted. It's not in exactly the right spot because the lock will not pass this screw. And there's a little bracket back there that this screw goes into. So I should be able to readjust that. And then I'll be able to release this lock without having to pull this screw out like I'm doing right now. Now that that screw's out, both of these locks are free, and this panel just comes forward and hinges down like that. So you can actually service this machine from the front as well in case you need better access to the internals that are on this panel. So now that this front panel is lowered down, you can get a better look at the internals that are on it. Here's the magic squares assembly. You can see we've got a big motor under there. You can get a better look at the steppers here. And one thing I did notice about this game is some of these coils, they have their little paper protective part missing. I don't think that's going to be a problem, but it's just worth noting. I saw several coils where their paper was either coming off or completely missing. So I'll have to be careful when working around those coils so that nothing gets damaged. But yeah, as you can see, this machine offers you 2 ways to service it, either from the back or the front, depending on what's more convenient. So I'm gonna fold this back up into the box, and then we'll go ahead and take off the glass and look under the playfield. So the first thing we have to do is open the coin door. And if you look inside the door here, you can see one thing right away that is missing. The actual coin mechanism is supposed to go right here, and it is gone. So I'll have to buy another one of those in order to get this machine to actually work when you put a nickel into it. It looks like it has everything else though, including the switch that the nickel would press to start a game. So this isn't a huge problem right now. If I want to test this game and actually start it, I can just push down on this switch right here and that will start the game normally. So I probably won't buy a coin mechanism until I know that this game works fully, and then it'll be able to accept nickels again. So then we've removed the lockdown bar, and in these bingo machines, these bars are called foot rails. So we have to remove that. There's 2 wing nuts underneath the coin door here. I don't think you can see them, but as soon as those are removed, the foot rail just lifts right out. So as you can see, this foot rail is a lot more complex than a regular pinball machine lockdown bar. You can see on the back, we have the metal rods for the 4 buttons on the front, and these buttons are what rotate the magic squares on the back glass. So when you press one, it'll rotate the corresponding magic square that's labeled either A, B, C, or D. So that's what those do. These are the nails that had the wing nuts on them. And so you can see how the underside of this looks. So now that that's removed, we can slide out the glass. So now I can get a better look at the play field now that the glass has been removed. You can see it's still quite colorful, not a ton of wear on this play field. You can see it's a little dirty, especially up near the top. That rubber looks like it has some mold on it. And these rubbers definitely need to be replaced. I mean, some of them look pretty good, like this one. It cracks a little bit, but it's not too bad. But others are really bad, like this one. You can see how cracked this is. So these rubbers need to be replaced, but that probably won't happen until I get this machine to a working state. You can see we got a little thing stapled right here. This is for amusement only, so they were trying to discourage the gambling nature of this machine wherever it was set up. So when opening up the playfield in one of these, the first thing you have to do is remove the 4 screws around the outer edges of the playfield that screw it down to the wood that's right below it. All the ones in here are missing, of course, so this playfield is already free. And there's a couple things you need to watch for when opening up the playfield in one of these. The first thing is this little metal piece here that the ball goes under when you shoot it. That can potentially make contact with this wood and score it, so you want to watch for that. And on this playfield, to open it, you have to pull the plunger all the way back, or else it'll catch on the plunger. So once you get it opened about here, then you can put the plunger back in. So pull it out a little bit, and then you also want to watch for, there's a motor. I don't know if it is visible in the camera, but there's another motor assembly that is screwed to the bottom of the playfield, and that is a very tight fit to come out. So you want to make sure that that doesn't hit anything, and the metal part on top doesn't hit anything. So it's kind of a balancing act between the two. So once you know that you're going to clear on both of those things, you can just pull it out a little bit. And then this playfield comes out very different from a normal pinball machine. So you actually have to pull it all the way up like this. And then there's a couple indentations in this piece of wood here, in these 2 pieces of wood, that you pull the playfield to, like this. You kind of have to rock it a bit. And then once it gets inside those indentations, there, now it's inside, then you can just lean it back like that, and then you have full access to the underneath of the playfield. So when you first open up the playfield, this is what you're gonna see. Now, this big piece right here, it almost kind of looks like a cork board, but this is what's responsible for keeping the balls in place when they fall into a hole, so they don't just immediately drop through. And seeing this piece in this position where the balls are allowed to drop through kind of makes me think that this game, when it was last powered on, was turned off in a position that was not the game over position, because the only time that this should be open is when you start a new game and before you shoot the first ball. So it was obviously turned off in that configuration, because after you shoot the first ball, and in any other state besides that, this should be moved up a little bit so that the balls can stay in the holes when you're actually playing. So that's actually not in the right position, and I imagine that that will correct itself when I first power up this game. As you can see, we have a motor right here and a relay. I imagine that those two things are what control the movement of this. And then this wooden contraption right here is just for the ball return. So once the balls do fall through when you start a new game, they'll all fall in here and then go back to the ball return. And then here are the pinballs right here. There are actually 8 balls in this game because after you shoot your 5 balls, you have the option to pay more money to get 3 extra balls in your game. So that's why there are 8 pinballs in here. And as you can see, this specific pinball right here has seen very much better days. I mean, look how crusty that looks. This is the only one that looks this bad. The other ones look pretty good, as you can see. But once this game is back to a running state, I'm either going to replace that pinball or I'm going to buff it out, and I'm going to buff all the other ones out too to make them look nice again. I have a couple spare pinballs, so I could replace this one if I really wanted to, but that will be for a much later time. So in this game, the ball loading mechanism is electronic. It's got a motor down here that when you shoot the ball, let's see if I can get this on camera with the playfield like this, there's a switch that's right under here, and so when the ball goes through past here, it'll activate that switch, and then the game will auto-load the next ball with that motor. So that's a completely automatic assembly. As you can see, we only have 1 plunger on this game. So that kind of tells you that. Down here, we have a couple counters. This one, I believe, is the play counter, and if I open the coin door again, you can see if that is indeed a play counter, this machine has been played 53,170 times. And then the other counter over here, for some reason, is covered with a piece of tape. I don't know why. I'll have to look into that. It's connected, so it's not like it's an unused piece inside the machine. So I'll have to figure out what that's for. Here are the switches for the buttons. So when you push those buttons down, it'll activate these switches here. And it looks like this machine also has a coin door open and closed sensor switch, because there's a switch right here that gets pressed when the coin door closes. And just by looking at it, I don't think it's in the right position, because if I go down there, you can see the switch. It's not changing anything when you push against it. So I think it's supposed to be closed, and right now it's open. I think it's supposed to be like that, and then when the coin door closes, it should go like that. So, and I imagine that that happened because this coin door has been closed for so long. The switch has just been used to sitting in that position, and so now it doesn't want to spring back. But that can easily be fixed if that is a problem. And continuing on the theme of missing screws, you can see that this wood piece has plenty of missing screws. There's at least 2, there might be more, and the screws that are in there seem way too small. You can see that the wood around it has started to kind of come off a bit. So either I need to put washers under these screws or just get all new screws. And I'm probably just going to get all new ones just so they all look the same. But that's for later. For now, we just need to get this machine working. So I'm going to go ahead and take out this little wooden ball return, and we'll take a look at what else is underneath the playfield. Okay, so this piece is now fully unscrewed, so I should be able to lift it and pull it out of the playfield. And there we go. And another problem I'm going to have to solve is these little light deflectors that are supposed to sit on top of the playfield. They like to fall out whenever I open up the playfield, so obviously I'm going to have to figure out a way to make them tighter. And it looks like someone in the past already tried to fix that problem because there's a piece of tape around this one. So obviously someone tried to make that fit tighter, and that's probably what I'm going to end up doing to these, because right now they are so loose they will fall out whenever they are tipped over by the opening of the playfield. But taking out that wood piece doesn't really reveal very much. There's not a ton of stuff on the bottom of the playfield except for a big wire harness And that looks like it just goes up to the back box. So there's not really a ton down here. It does reveal more of the ball lifter motor. So you can kind of see more how that works. But other than that, it doesn't reveal too much. So that is what the inside of the playfield of this game looks like. One thing I did notice on the shutter motor, that's what this motor is called, there is a missing wire on this switch right here. You can see there was a wire here and it's been cut. Fortunately, I have the manual, which features a bunch of pictorial diagrams for every motor and stepper in the game, and the schematics, so I can easily figure out where this wire came from and see where it needs to go. So I think we'll address that first, because I'm not going to plug in this game until I know the wiring is good, or at least looks good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and see what that wire is for, what switch that is, and we should be able to get a new wire put from there to wherever it's supposed to go. So let's get started with that. So in terms of the manual for this game, I printed it out and I put it in a little 3-ring binder. This is actually the flyer for the game, so I decided that would make a good cover page. But if we open it up here, you can see there are the playfield stickers that I printed out and will put on later on. Here's the manual, Bally Night Club, operating instructions, and parts catalog. And if we go through it, you can see we have a bunch of pictorial diagrams and even little mini schematics for different things. So this will make it very easy to repair this game. And if we get toward the end of the manual here, we can see we have the pictorial diagram and the switch chart for the shutter motor. And you can see we have each switch labeled right here, so we can figure out which switch that is and see where each wire connects, and we can restore functionality to that switch. So taking a look at these switches and comparing them to the actual motor on the playfield here, this one is switch 4C that we need to look at. So that's the one that we need to figure out where the wire's going to. Oh, you know what? I just made a mistake. That switch is unused because in the diagram it shows that in the 4th column we have 3 switches, A, B, and C. And if you look on the actual motor, I'll show you. This here is column 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you look inside column 4, I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, there are actually 4 switches in there. So there's a B, C, and then there's another switch. And if you look at that one that has the missing wire, which is the 4th switch, you can see that the other contact for the switch also is not connected to anything. So this switch is totally not used in the game at all. So I'm not sure why that switch is there. If you look at it, you can see it's closed. So, I mean, this is the switch right here. So I'm not really sure why that's there. Maybe they just needed another switch there for some reason to make something work. I have no idea, but that's actually not a problem. I thought there was a missing wire, but after looking at the pictorial diagram, I can see now that that switch is not part of the circuit. So that's a good reason that we have documentation like this. We can confirm that the wiring is actually correct or not. So that's not a problem. So at this point, I think what I'm going to do is replace the missing bulbs in the back box there, and then we'll get to wiring up the power cord. We'll do some initial testing and checking before I plug it in, and then we'll see what this thing does. So let's get started with doing some of that. Okay, so before I go about replacing the missing bulbs in the back glass, I want to take these little assemblies out for the magic squares because there are bulbs behind here, and I just want to make sure that they're all there. So let's go ahead and remove those. So I assume this whole thing kind of just comes out now. Yep. And we indeed have bulbs back there, so that's good. Yeah, we have bulbs back there too. Got bulbs there. We have bulbs back there as well. So None of the bulbs behind those are missing, so that's good. So if I look at the back glass and I look at all the missing bulbs that are in there, it looks like there's only a couple. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's only 5 missing bulbs, so that's not too bad. One thing I did notice when I was back here for the first time is see how this bulb is nice and tight? That's how they all should be. This one's super loose, so obviously this one's no longer connected to the back side of this panel, so I'm gonna have to either fold this down or go in the back and see if I can reconnect this. It's still in the socket and it'll still work. It's just no longer either stapled or screwed to this piece of wood anymore. So I'll have to fix that once I go back there again. So there we go. We got all new bulbs in those 5 missing slots, and they even match the bulbs that are in this machine. So that looks great. So going into the back box again, the first thing that I want to do is replace the blown fuse that I saw in here. And I looked at all the other fuses and they were good. So it's only just a single blown fuse. And I think it's the bottom one. Yep. That is a blown fuse. And that, according to the sheet here, is a 10 amp fuse. Let's see if that is indeed a 10 amp fuse. It is. So it is a 10 amp, 250 volt fuse. Let me see if I have another one to put in there. And here we go. Here's one right here. A 10 amp, you can see it right there. 250 volt fuse. So that is gonna go right in there. Just like that. So there's a problem that's fixed. So I decided to check all of the other fuses just to make sure that they were the correct amperage, and they are, except for the top 2. The top 2 are rated for 8 amps, and the top 2 that are actually in there are 10 amp fuses. Now that's okay. If it was under 8 amps, then that would be a problem, but since they're rated for over 8 amps, it'll still run fine with those fuses. But I am going to replace those 2 with 8 amp fuses, just because if something does get overdriven when I first plug this in and test it, I want those fuses to blow at the proper time and not, you know, overdrive something to the point where it breaks before the fuse does. So I'm going to take those 2 10 amp fuses out and replace them with 8 amp fuses. There we go. 2 8 amp fuses installed in the top 2 slots. So I think before I wire up the power cord to this thing, I'm going to give this back box a light vacuuming just because of how much dust is actually back here. I mean, if you look up here, you can see there is a bunch of what looks to be sawdust up there. So this back box definitely needs to be cleaned out. I mean, it does have mold issues too. You can see it right there, down there, and probably in a bunch of other places too. But I like to give this machine just a little bit of a vacuuming just to get the excess dust out. You can see the wires kind of have a little coating of dust on them, probably because they have been sitting unused for a long time. Probably sitting in a dusty environment. You can see it really good right here. A lot of dust on everything. So I'm going to give this thing a little bit of a cleaning, and then we can get to work on wiring up the power cord and seeing what this thing does. All right, now we're going to wire the power cord to the machine. As you can see, I already put the power cord into the machine, and I was able to do that because I drilled a hole in this wood panel here because the cord, the new cord that I bought, is too big to fit in this tiny little hole up there. So I just drilled in a hole right there and fed it through up there. So now I can hook these 2 wires from the power cord to these 2 wires here. So let's go ahead and do that and get a power cord back wired into this machine. And there we go. There is the new power cord wired up into this machine. I just have to push it down a little bit so it goes the whole way down. And there we have it. New power cord, and this machine is now ready to be plugged in for the first time. And I don't really see anything in the back box that screams at me that I need to test it. I'm assuming the transformer is good. We'll find out if it's good when I plug it in. And I do see some resistors around some of the switch relay banks, like up on this panel. I don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, but kind of up here, there's some resistors by some of these relays. And I assume these resistors, even if they were bad or out of spec, they wouldn't affect the power on nature of this machine. So I think we're ready to go ahead and plug this machine in for the first time and see what it does. Okay, I have the back box open and I am going to go ahead and plug the power cord in and we will see what happens together. So, what do we think? Is this machine going to have any life or is it just going to do nothing? Let's plug in the power cord and see what happens. Ooh, something happened. Oh, geez. That fuse that I just put in there blew like crazy. Yeah, that was the fuse I just put in. And look what it did to it. So, obviously, we have a problem in the power somewhere. So, now I gotta figure out what that is. So before we delve into any sort of testing on this machine, let's first look at the schematic. I have it pulled up right here. And this is the section where the power cord is plugged in and everything that's connected to the power cord. So what's happening is we have one lead of the power cord going through the power switch underneath the cabinet, going through the 10 amp fuse, and that's the one that blew when I plugged it in, and then it goes right to the transformer. And then the other end doesn't go through anything, it just goes straight to the transformer. But you can see we have several things that are connecting the two leads together. And I'm no expert at deducing schematics, but what I think is happening is something in this area right here is shorting the two leads together, which is creating a short circuit and blowing the fuse. That's what I think is happening. And so some things we can check are the reset coil in the trip bank, because that is connecting the two leads together along with the shutter motor cam switch 3B. And if we go ahead and look at the manual, which is right here, this is the trip relay bank pictorial view. And if you look at the relays that are on that bank, they're labeled right there. The trip bank reset coil is connected to the main power cord, as you saw in the schematic. It is connected right there. So the trip relay bank is right here. And this is the trip relay bank reset coil. So we can check and see if this is shorted, because if it's shorted, then it could be drawing excessive current and blowing that fuse. So let's check this first. So in order to test a coil, you really should do it out of circuit, but I'm gonna test it in circuit for now just to see if I see any readings that look out of whack. So according to what I've seen online for pinball coils, we should have a resistance of around 2 to 3 ohms. And anything greater than that means the coil is good. If it's shorted, like if I were to touch the two leads together, wait for the meter to update here, that's what a dead short looks like. So if we get that across the coil, then the coil's bad. So let's hook up the probes to both ends of the coil and see what kind of resistance we get. 9 ohms looks good to me. So the problem should not be this coil. So looking at the schematic, you can see that one end of the power cord is connected to 3 different motors. The CU motor, I'm not sure what that is yet, the Magic Squares motor, and the mixer and spotting motor. So I could check those motors to see if they're free and maybe see if that's the problem. Well, I actually found a couple problems in this machine just by looking around. I don't think they're related to the machine not being able to power itself on without blowing the fuse, but I did find a problem that was related to the reset coil on the trip relay bank here. The coil is right there, and what this does is it goes in and it resets all of these relays back to their home position, basically. Well, the problem was the coil would go in if I pressed it, but it wouldn't bounce back. It wouldn't rebound back like it's doing now. So what I went ahead and did was I sprayed some lubricant throughout the shaft, both end points and in the coil. And it turned out that the coil itself needed some grease. So now it actually goes back. So that's working now. Don't think that was related to the problem, but it was a problem that needed to be fixed. And another thing that is completely unrelated to the power problem altogether is I saw on this relay bank here, there's a coil that's called the anti-cheat coil. And I'm not sure what that does yet, but someone stuck a piece of paper under here so that this coil would basically stay energized. The switches would always be in the energized position, because if I take it out, the switches go to the other position. So someone wanted this stuck down, but I'm just gonna revert it back to how it's supposed to be. I did go ahead and take a look at the Magic Squares motor, and I don't know if it's supposed to spin freely all the time, but it is pretty hard to turn. So if this was trying to turn when the machine was powered on, I would understand that it being unable to turn would draw enough current to blow out that fuse. So I think I'm going to lift this panel down from the front and take a look at this motor, because it's pretty tight. I mean, these are the parts that actually rotate, and they're not tight. They're pretty loose, easy to turn. But this one is not, and this is where the main motor is. So let's take a look at that and see if that's the problem. Well, I don't think the Magic Square motor is the problem, because I can turn these gears right here and the whole assembly will move. So I don't think our problem's there, so let's go ahead and take a look at the schematic and see what else is in that little section. Well, I just reviewed the footage for what happened when I plugged in the power cord to this machine, and we had some brief life out of it. And I saw two things that told me exactly where I needed to start my troubleshooting. So, what I saw happen was these two motors ran for a little bit. But what I saw with this motor is that there was a little arc up here, and then a plume of smoke came out of it. So obviously there was some sort of major current draw or short that occurred within the coil for this motor, and I think that's what blew the fuse. So I think we need to start our search here, because this is the mixer motor, and according to the schematic, this is one of the three motors that is in that little circuit on the 110 volt section of the transformer. So this is what we need to look at first. And then another thing that I saw was there was a light on the back box that came on for a little bit, and I think it was this one right here. And that would only come on if power is getting to the other section of the transformer and going through the circuit far enough to light up this light. So it seems to me like the transformer in this machine is good, and that our problem is in this motor. Because what I think happened is when the motor had that little arc and then the smoke came out of it, it shorted the two leads for the power cord together, and then that blew the fuse. Although, if that happened, if the two leads shorted on the power cord, that probably would have tripped the breaker. So I guess that's not what happened. Anyhow, I think the arc from this motor is what caused the excessive current draw and blew out that 10 amp fuse. So let's take a look at the mixer motor and see what we can find. So here's a closer look at the mixer motor, and as you can see, this is one of the coils that the paper has fallen off of, and it looks like it might have burned up a little bit before, because the wires look a little discolored, and I see kind of like this black goo substance around the coil. And if I look at the motor down here, let's see, this one still has its paper, and I don't see that goo substance on that motor. So there could be an intermittent short in a winding in this motor, and that caused the arc. I checked it for shorts on the power cord, and it does not short the power leads together. So there's not a short in it, but obviously something in that motor is not right if it arced and smoked. And it's not seized or anything, and if I rotate it, you can see it is moving the gears that are in here. It's moving these two, and I can see it moving these. So it's not like it's not working. I think what I'm gonna do to start is I'm gonna reset all of the steppers in this game back to their home position. And that's something I can actually do pretty easily, because in the manual, it shows the steppers in their home position in the pictorial diagram. So I can just advance those steppers to their home position. So And that'll be a good way to test all of the steppers too, just to see if they need grease or anything. So let's go ahead and do that and see if the steppers in this machine work. All right, so let's start with these three steppers first. We have the yellow line unit, the red line unit, and the score unit. So I can look up the diagrams for those in the manual and we can see what their home positions are. So here's the pictorial diagram for the yellow line unit. And as you can see, we have labeled contacts going from 0, and that counts up by 5, and it goes all the way up to contact set 49. So there's 49 rows of contacts on this stepper. And as you can see, there's a section here labeled A where there are 4 wipers close together, and those wipers in their home position are on the innermost set of contacts on 45, 46, 47, and 48. So we can use those to determine where the home position is. But if you look at the actual yellow line unit, you can see that the wires go on the top, the right, and the bottom side. But in the pictorial diagram, it's in a different orientation. So when you're looking at it in the machine, it's actually positioned like this. Because as you can see, there are 4 wires right here, and the rest of these are unused. Those are these 4 wires right here. So what we want to do is make sure that these 4 contacts are in that position. And as you can see, there's another contact in the middle, there's one on the top, and then there's one on the bottom set of rows there. And it looks like on the yellow line unit, these are those 4 contacts. This is the one in the middle, the one on the top, and the one on the inside. So if we compare the home position to the position that this stepper's in, you can see it's not too far off. So contact set 0 is this row right here. And according to the pictorial diagram, these 4 contacts here start at contact 48. So that would be this one right here. So it needs to go down just a little bit. So in these steppers, there's 2 coils. There's one that makes it go one way and another that makes it go the other. So we can press the bottoms of these coils and test to see if the stepper's working. Okay, so that's going the opposite way. So that coil's working good. This one, oh, this is a reset. Okay, you see how when I pushed it, the coil stuck itself in and it went all the way back down. So I think right now it's in its home position. And it indeed is. It is in the same position that is outlined on the pictorial diagram. So we have the yellow line unit back in its home position. So now let's look at the red line unit. So here's the diagram for the red line unit, and it looks like home position is exactly the same as the yellow line unit. And if this unit works the same way, this coil is a reset, and then this one down here makes it go up. So first let's test the coil that makes it go up. It might actually be all the way up. Let me push this one. Yep, that resets it. Let's just test this coil. Okay, so this stepper is working, and then this is a reset. So that one is now reset to home position. All right, so here's the score unit, and as you can see, the wipers on this one are a little different than the other 2, but if it works the same way as the first 2 steppers, then this coil is the reset, and then the one under here makes it go up. Yep, so that's all the way up. Let's push this one and reset it. So that is reset. So now all 3 of these steppers are back in their home position. I'm gonna go through and do that to every stepper in the game, and then hopefully we can get this game into a state where it thinks that the game is over. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the steppers. Okay, I went ahead and reset all of the steppers in this game back to their 0 position. I even reset the 2 big steppers here, like the spotting disc and the search disc, back to their home position. So I believe everything is now correct, and I even reset the gears inside of this assembly back to their home position based on diagrams I found on the internet that showed the home position of these gears for this game. So I believe everything is now reset back to 0, or the home position. I even went under the playfield and I put the little shutter back to the closed position, so now the balls don't fall through, so I reset that as well. And I think what I'm gonna do at this point is something a little controversial. I stuck one of the 10 amp fuses that was up here into the bottom slot, and I'm gonna power the game on again and take a good look at what it does. If the motor arcs again, then we'll see it. I just wanna see if resetting all of these back to the 0 position helped anything, and I have other 10 amp fuses that I can install. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug this thing in again and just see what happens. So I'm just about to plug in the power cord, and one thing I also did when resetting these mixer gears is I put some grease in the shaft and in a couple of the moving parts down here that lock the gears in different positions, because it looked like they needed some grease, so I sprayed a little bit of lubricant in there. So that's one other thing I did. So obviously when I plugged in the power cord the first time, the machine was turned on. I flipped the cabinet power switch to the other position. So now when I plug in, it shouldn't do anything. So I have the power cord in my hands. I'm gonna plug it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, nothing happened, that's good. So that means the machine was definitely on and it is plugged in. So when I flick the switch underneath the cabinet, we should either see a machine that's working now, or it's going to do the exact same thing and blow the fuse. All right, flicking the switch. 3, 2, 1. Yep, I think it did the same thing. So I saw some lights on the back glass come on for a second. So we do indeed have life out of it. And let's just see. I didn't see what happened, so I'm going to have to review the footage. But the fuse did blow again, so obviously we still have something wrong. So I'm going to look at what just happened, and then we'll go from there. And yes, it did the exact same thing. There was an arc out of the motor and smoke came out of it. So obviously whatever our problem is, it's in here. So I can't really see anything that's wrong with it. There must be a short somewhere. I might actually have to remove this motor and take a good look at it. So I'm gonna think about what I'm gonna do next, and then I will come back. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is a little process of elimination. So what I did was I desoldered the 2 wires going to the mixer motor. We're gonna eliminate that from the circuit. I put in another good fuse, and we're gonna power it up again and see if it actually will run now. And by doing that, the only thing we eliminated from the schematic is just this little path right here. So the machine should still be able to run fine. I'm gonna go ahead and plug it in and we'll see what it does now. Okay, well, I don't remember if I turned the machine back off, so I'm gonna go ahead and plug in the power cord and we'll see what happens. Hey, it's running. Look at that. So the problem was indeed the mixer motor, because now the machine is running. So you can see we have some back box lights now, but it looks like we have some loose sockets because looking at the back glass, this is where the word nightclub is, and I think all of these should be lit, and I think these 4 on the bottom right here should be lit too. Let's just see. Oh yeah, that one was totally loose. You can see this one is now lighting up, so I'm gonna have to tighten these in their sockets. So yeah, that's what it should look like with all of those lit up. And these sockets are so incredibly loose, if I just touch one, it'll go out. So yeah, these sockets are definitely gonna have to be looked at because they are not wanting to make good contact with the lights. And there's some lights in here, like this one, that are so dark. They're obviously old bulbs that have darkened, so some of these bulbs will have to be replaced. And I plan on upgrading this machine to warm white LEDs once I get it fully working. So all these bulbs will eventually be gone and replaced with LEDs, which will look a lot better. But as you can see, we have lights, and I don't have it on the camera, but the lights on the playfield are also lit. So the only problem in this game so far is the mixer motor. So I think what I'm gonna do is remove it, and we'll take a look at it and see if there's anything that I can do to fix it. One thing I can do actually while this machine is running is test some of the steppers because some of them will light up lights on the back glass. So, for example, the yellow and red line steppers we can test. So the yellow line stepper will cause each light right here to light up one by one until it gets up to this one. So I'm gonna go ahead and step through the yellow line unit and it should light up those lights. And so that is the end of the stepper unit. And the reason why these big ones stayed on when these went up is because these are feature lights. So this is the double score feature, triple score, and quadruple score. And so what happens is when the stepper goes up, these are just like little arrows on the back glass. And so eventually, once you get the stepper to go past these arrows, then the next score value will light. So that's how that works. Let's go ahead and do the red line unit, which is this row of lights there. Is this one burned out? No, this one's not burned out, it's just not making contact. Pretend that's lit. This one should be lit. And there's the end of that one. So I couldn't really tell because I was in the back, but it looked like all the lights were working except for this one, which is loose. So there we go. It seems like the red line and yellow line stepper lights are working for the most part. So that's good. Go ahead and shut this thing off. So I think now I'm going to remove the motor and we'll see what we can do to get that working so that this machine can be actually usable. Okay, here is the motor. It's very dirty, so I'm going to try not to get a bunch of grease on my hands. And after taking a closer look at this motor, I don't think that this motor is going to be fixable because as you can see, the paper on the winding around the motor here has come off and some of the windings have turned black because of the dirt and just the amount of wear and tear that's on them. And so what I think is happening and why the fuse is blowing every time this motor gets activated is because the insulation, the coating that's around each separate winding is starting to come off. And so what I think is happening is some of these windings are shorting against each other. And I think that's what's causing the arcing and the smoking. And that would explain the huge rush in current draw and the fuse blowing. Because as you saw, the smoke was coming right out of this winding area. So I don't think this motor can be fixed unless I rewind the actual coil that's in here. And to do that, you have to know certain characteristics about it, like the kind of wire that it has, like the diameter of the wire that it has, the resistance, total resistance of the coil that's in here. So, and while it can be done, that's something that I don't really want to have to do is rewind this huge coil because I don't know the characteristics of it. I don't know how fast it should be. I don't know how many windings there should really be. It's just not something I'm an expert on doing. So what I went ahead and did is I went on eBay to see if someone else had this same motor, and someone actually did. So I bought a new motor for this game, and it should be coming in the next few days. And once I get it, I'll be able to put it back in the machine, and we'll see if it can run the mixer motor without blowing the fuse. And so while we wait for that, I figure that we should get some other things knocked out first, some other smaller things. And those things might include putting grease on parts that need grease, doing some more cleanup on the machine, replacing the 2 locks in the back door so I can actually lock and unlock them. Just little things like that, no major mechanical work. So I'm not going to put those things on camera, but I will show you when I'm done what I've done to the machine. So I'll come back with my next update. All right, I just finished doing a lot of quality of life improvements to this machine. So let's go over what I did. First thing is I vacuumed out the bottom of the cabinet because it was extremely filthy. You can see now we no longer have any dirt in the coin door and throughout the bottom of the cabinet, so that's better. I also replaced all the screws for the wooden ball return with some nice new ones that are a little bit bigger, and they worked just fine, so now there's no more missing screws for this thing. I also went ahead and cleaned off all the mold on the back of the shutter, as well as on this piece of wood that the shutter is mounted to. I cleaned off this little thing here, so that thing was filthy and now it looks so much better. And I installed 2 new locks in the back, and they're unlocked right now, but when they're locked, this door is super tight. It will not go anywhere. So there's the first lock, there's the second one, so brand new locks there. I also went ahead and wiped down this entire back panel to get all the mold off of it. Yes, it took away a little bit of the paint, as you can see, but I'd rather have a little bit of paint loss than mold. Plus, this is the inside of the machine, so I don't care as much about that. I would not like that if that was on the outside of the machine. So, not my preferred look, but I'd rather have no mold. I also did the same for the bottom of the back box down here, wiped that up and got most of the mold out. So, I just wanted to get that squared away before I did anything else back here. And so that's going to be it for part 1. In part 2, we'll install the new motor that I bought, and we'll see if this game actually works fully or if it needs some more diagnosis and fixing done. So in this video, we got the game running. We figured out why the fuse was blowing every time we turned it on, and now we're ready to install the new motor and see if the game actually works right. So look forward to that and a lot more other testing in part 2. That's all for me in this video. I will see you next time.